In 1991, Sunsoft released Batman the video game for the Sega Genesis. It was love at first sight for me. I enjoyed its simple yet fun play mechanics and its great atmosphere. It captured the look and feel of the Tim Burton movie released in 1989, nailing the villains, the locations, and the vehicles from that iconic film perfectly. So much so, I'd say it's one of the better movie-to-game adaptations of its time. And man, you can't forget about that soundtrack. My goodness, did Sunsoft's custom driver do an excellent job producing some of the best tunes this system was capable of. It made such an impression on me, I stick it at the end of all my videos. It's just so good, I feel the need to share it every chance I get. In this episode, we are going to go over why I love this game so much, discuss whether or not it holds up today, and decide if it's something you should add to your collection. I hope you guys enjoy my review of Batman the video game. The setup and gameplay of Batman will be very familiar to you if you played games in 1991. It's a standard action platformer that has you battling the Joker's minions as you jump and climb your way around 6 levels. This gameplay features the projectile-like batarangs for distance fighting, punches and kicks up close, as well as a jumping flip that does damage if you land it properly. Batman can also block attacks by holding the punch button. Keep in mind though, you can only block projectiles like bullets and rockets. Up-close melee attacks will go right through your block and still damage you. The stage layouts are pretty typical. Most levels scroll left and right with the occasional vertical transition. They are littered with heavy platforming segments, and there are plenty of bottomless pits to rob you of your life precious. Some areas have a stronger enemy to battle at the end, some not. To break up all that jumping and punching are vehicle-based stages where Batman gets to play with his wonderful toys. First you get the Batmobile, complete with machine gun and limited rockets. The Joker's men chase you down and you'll need to avoid not just their weapons, but crashing into them as well. You also get to take to the skies using the Batwing, again outfitted with guns and missiles to shoot down the Joker's goon squad. These elements provide even more authenticity to the closeness of the movie, and look and play like a horizontal shoot 'em up. It definitely added some much needed spice to the on-foot sections. Despite Sunsoft releasing Batman games based on the same movie across multiple platforms, each one was different from one another. There is no other port of this title anywhere, adding a bit of magic to it. This is particularly true since it's a licensed game, and will likely never see a reissue of any kind. This is at its heart a true exclusive, and likely always will be. Due to some contractual obligations, this was delayed in the West. It originally launched in July of 1990 in Japan, but didn't make its way to the US until June of 1991, and Europe didn't see it until 1992, 2 years after the Japanese version. Since it was a 1990 release originally, it predictably comes on a tiny 4-meg cart. This translates into repetition in enemy assets, smaller sprites, and not a lot of stages. Don't let that make you think it's a poor-looking title, however. Graphically, Batman is a good-looking early Genesis title, especially considering the year it was first available. There are lots of nice details right from the opening stage. Dark alleys extend into the background. Street signs pass in the foreground while a quick rain shower adds a nice environmental effect to tie it all together. Of course, it has the hilarious and inexplicable stage design that defined that generation, such as a museum that has spiked platforms and bottomless pits for some odd reason. A few later stages have some nice parallax effects as well. It does begin to reuse assets heavily, and this does hurt its overall visual presentation. What starts off as varied and well detailed ends in areas and enemies that are nearly indistinguishable the entire way. One area where Batman excels is its music. I am a fan of the electronic synth that the Genesis produces, and there are many games for it that I think sound just as good or better than anything that was available on the Super Nintendo, and this game is one of them. This soundtrack is absolutely stellar. Every single entry oozes quality and is perfectly matched to the part of the game that presents it. Whether it's the first time Batman glides down onto Gotham City streets, or whether you're blazing down the road terrorizing the Goon Squad, each melody and rhythm doesn't just sound like it belongs in the game, but stands on its own outside of it. I remember being a 16-year-old kid, headphones on, doing my homework while listening to this game's music player. It's the type of example that is given whenever anyone tries to belittle the sound hardware of the Genesis. It was composed by Naoki Kodaka, who also did scores for classics like Blaster Master, Fester's Quest, and the NES's own version of Batman. If I ever do a top 10 music episode for the Genesis, you can bet this game will be well up there. It wasn't the first time I heard great music on the platform, but it sure was one of the most memorable. Listening to me speak about the game, you'd think it was a nearly faultless experience beginning to end. Unfortunately, it's not. While I can look at it with the eyes that watch the Genesis software grow over the course of 7 or 8 years, many others cannot. There are numerous games for the Genesis that look better, and many of those are of the same genre. That 4-mag cart it's on really does limit things. Right after the Batmobile stage, nearly everything takes a strong turn into plainness. There are entire stages that are one single scene repeated the entire way, which really hurts after we got such a great and varied amount of stuff in the first 3 stages. Enemies suffer much the same. Entire stages are just filled with the same guy over and over again, next to no variety at all. Boss encounters, which should be the ultimate way to mix up the gameplay a bit, all suffer from having virtually one attack animation pattern. Learn it after a try or two and that's it. They end up being no different than any other enemy encounter in the game. So while it's true that Batman the video game has a great soundtrack, plays well, and starts out strong, there is no denying that the late game lacks the same quality. Those vehicle stages do a ton to break things up, but many will still walk away from this wondering why some people love it so much. With all of that said, I still feel Batman is a great overall piece of software. It does suffer from a few things that hurt it, but once you take everything into consideration, I think the good outweighs the bad enough to say it's a winner. The soundtrack alone wins major points with me, and it's easy to pick up and play nature, makes it a good one to replay with your kids, or just sit back and relax for a night of retro goodness. Sunsoft had a way back then of taking the simplest of concepts and making them fun to play, and Batman definitely embodies that theme. It's more of an extension of their NES development than something you could say took full advantage of the 16-bit hardware it was on. But that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Lots of early 16-bit titles could be defined as simple in one way or the other, but that made them no less a blast to play. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.